So welcome everyone to today's FDM Deep Dive and Live Demo webinar that's hosted by our practice leads, Russ Rogers, who is our Senior Practice Financial Close Director, and Reed Kerr, who is one of our Financial Close Senior Practice Leads. My name is Elizabeth Feldman, and I am here with you from the team at Emtec. I'll be helping facilitate some of your questions, so definitely keep them coming over for Russ and Reed. And on that subject, a little bit of housekeeping items to let you know how you can participate in today's session. Now, although we will be muting all participants today, you do have the ability to ask questions throughout the webinar using your chat and question pane located near the bottom of the control panel. Simply just type in your question and click away. And at the end of the presentation, we will address your questions during our Q&A session, taking as many questions as we have time for. If we are unable to get to your question, we will be sure to have someone from our team follow up with you. And both the slides and the recording of today's presentation will be made available for you to download from our website later this afternoon. Now, in the meantime, if you do have any questions or concerns during the webinar, I am here and happy to help, so please feel free to send me a message using the question box. Once again, I'd like to thank you guys all for joining our webinar, and with that, I'll turn it over to you, Russ.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I know we're going to give everybody just a couple of minutes to start up. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to try to make the next hour as interactive as possible between Reed, Kerr, and myself. So we'll give everybody just a couple of minutes here to get started up, and we'll start the webinar. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Russ Rogers. I'm the National Practice Lead for Close Consolidations here at Emtec. A little bit about myself. I've been doing this for a long time, about the last 22 years, getting ready to start my 23rd year in consulting. I started out at a small company called IMRS. I was employee number 72. IMRS became Software, which became Hyperion Solutions, and from microcontrol to enterprise to HFM, I've kind of done it all, performance scorecarding, things like that. For the last 12 years, 13 years now, I've been a partner in both an independent as well as a couple of different firms. I've been here at Emtec for the last 2.5 years. My background is accounting. I'm a CPA, CMA. I'm a certified consultant on the 11.x platform for HFM. And because I kind of rely on my accounting skill set, I do a lot of foreign exchange. I do a lot of intercompany and helping folks understand how intercompany works within HFM. And I have a background in mergers and acquisitions as well. So. I live in Kansas City. My office is in Chicago, but I live in Kansas City. Go Jayhawks. We're in basketball season, so let's go Jayhawks. And feel free to always drop me a line. And joining me today is Reed Kerr, who's one of my senior folks. Reed and I started back together at Hyperion, and I'll let Reed introduce himself.
Well, thank you, Russ. Yeah, this is Reed Kerr. Similar path to Russ. 21 years, started on 22 within the consulting experience. Started out with IMRS, merged on to Hyperion, worked with in the consolidations front there during the 90s and into 2000s. Started out with HFM, worked with a second client. Upon leaving Hyperion, had also worked for some of the big four firms and also some other smaller firms and also independent. Have been working with Emtec now for 2+ years. Once again, similar from an accounting standpoint, or with the similar with the accounting background. I'm also certified in HFM in version 11. I am based in Chicago office, but I am in North Carolina. And yes, there is a proud UNC Tar Heels string that goes through the family here, notwithstanding their recent things to come up. I can be reached through the email of reed.kerr@emtec.inc. Thank you, Russ.
Well, we won't even talk about the Tar Heels stealing Roy Williams, but hey, what are you going to do? Our team here at Emtec, we have a EPM practice that is really bar none one of the better in the country, and from my team's experience, we've done well over 400 applications. We have practical experience. A lot of us have been clients and have been working in this space for a long time. Practical as well as the technical expertise across all the industries. Every once in a while people ask me to list all the industries, and I said, okay, it's easier to list the ones I haven't worked in. One of the differentiators for Emtec as a team for EPM is that we have our own in-house technical support group headed by Louis Castillo. And like us, Louis has tons of experience. We've been installing the 123 platform for quite a while now, and his team has it down to a science, and they're really good advisors when it comes to the technical space across the breadth of the Oracle EPM suite. And really what Emtec has is a really cohesive team supporting all of your Oracle applications. It's all headed by a guy named Don Sweeney, and under Don is both the EPM practice with Dan Franchina, and John Given heads our Oracle ERP practice, and Todd Seiler heads one of our Oracle technology stacks. So I've worked with all of these guys, and so we really have a lot of wide-ranging experience when it comes to both ERPs as well as EPM suite sitting on top of them. So, you know, a lot of really great experience there. So, you know, FDMEE, I lifted this slide directly from Oracle.com, and really what it is a really good explanation of what FDMEE really is. And it, as a business issue, the quality of your data is paramount. You know, everything that we do within closed consolidations focuses on data quality. And FDMEE is really the latest in data migration and data quality, and for all of the reasons that we're showing there. But it really does help finance users increase their confidence in the numbers and lowers the cost of compliance by eliminating data integrity risks associated with collecting, mapping, validating, and moving critical financial data across the enterprise. So as a consultant, it's really my job to make sure that whenever we look at FDM and FDMEE, we really kind of understand that what we're trying to do is create a very solid link from all of the sources of data that you collect electronically. All of those sources, creating a strong link from collection all the way through mapping, all the way through committing that data to your target system. We specialize in EPM, and that is planning, HFM, SBase, and really what we're seeing is that FDM has a lot of usage across the board, and as it progresses, it's really going to be the premier platform. So FDMEE is new for the 123 version. It's really a combination of two things. FDM, as we've always known it, plus the power of Oracle Data Integration, ODI. And really a combination of those two things is FDM. So it used to be that you had two different kind of products, FDM and the ERP integrator, and it's been combined, but it really has been rebuilt on the ODI platform. And it basically keeps all of the FDM process wrapper that you're used to. Getting your goldfish, making sure you can import the data, validate it, export it, and then run your checks. All of that still exists, and it really is the time-tested process and methodology of FDM that remains the power of FDMEE. A couple of different things. New customers can only license FDMEE. This is the last version that's going to allow you to do what we call upgrade in place, which is just upgrade your classic FDM application into the 123 platform. It really is a rebrand, and so it is FDMEE 11.1.2.3.500, and that's the version that you want to be on. It is the terminal release of what you know as FDM Classic, upgrading in place for the last time. If you upgrade starting in 1.2.4, you must upgrade to FDMEE. They will not give you a choice. And we'll talk about some of those considerations as we go through this. All implementations that we're currently doing, all new implementations, as well as a lot of the upgrades, we are doing in FDMEE. We just had a couple of different clients go live on their FDMEE solution. Some of the improvements that we've seen, integrated security with shared services. You no longer have to maintain separate security, separate logins. Over the years, we've kind of had to play nice with the security side of FDM, and now that it's integrated into shared services, it's much easier to implement. There is a different workflow. It simplifies the maintenance and development of applications. To give you an idea, I was working with a client in Chicago, and we had implemented FDMEE to do their actual data, and they wanted to do their budget data, and it took us a total of about 25 minutes to do. It was really pretty cool. There's a reduced need for custom scripting. So one of my knocks on FDM has always been the need to do a lot of VB scripting to do things. And you really don't have to do a lot of that VB scripting within FDMEE. And it is completely web-based. So a lot of folks really like their workstation client, but I'd really encourage you not to use the workstation client moving forward. This is the last version for it. It can be completely web-based. Some of the upgrade considerations, I'm going to have Reed go through these. He and I have been working a lot together on upgrades and helping clients kind of understand what the upgrade path is. So I'm going to let him go through this.
Ideal. Thank you, Russ. Just wanted to say thank you for welcoming to this webcast. Talking about some of the migrations that have gone on with FDM to FDMEE. I would like to tell you both sides of the coin, both from the positive sides and some of the other considerations taken into place. Previously under FDMEE, I've had a particular client in St. Louis who's doing an implementation, and they told me during the design session about the accounts coming into place, and these accounts are going to be mapped in here, and these other accounts are going to be mapped in here. Then when we started loading in data and noticed the numbers were a little bit off, they said, oh, wait a minute, these accounts are going into here, but based upon what cost center they have. So are they going to be above operating income or below was directly correlated with the cost center. So we brought in the additional field and started doing the mappings and building that out. One of the key things that's positiveness about the FDMEE is not only having between the exceptions and the ends and likes as far as your mappings, but you also have something called the multidimensional, which you see mentioned here. Previously, your scripts were written, or whenever that multidimensional mapping was needed. The example that I gave previously was on the accounts that were based upon the cost center as far as where their destination would be. The data would go into FDM and come out the other end to go to, say, HFM in this case. And what happened within HFM as far as their mappings in the VB script would always be a mystery. Let's get this particular person who knows VB script and can really hark on it and fix any issues or mapping errors we have. With the new release of FDMEE, you have something called multidimensional mapping, which actually allows you to pull in the different chart fields that you need for your particular mapping, which which would have greatly reduced the amount of Visual Basic script we would have written during the import process. With this multidimensional, not only can you just have multiple dimensions being brought into your mapping table, say for my account mapping, using my earlier example, I'm bringing in the cost center, but I also have the ability to actually go out to my HFM application, see my landing zone for, or my landing spots for my particular data, and use those in my mapping tables. In another different client, we had similar, they were using an SAP GL system and had those at various places around the world, had the same chart of accounts, but yet the cost centers, the product definitions were different. Product codes associated with it were more regional based as opposed to more national based. You also had a direct connection into your application. One of the key things, Russ, did we jump a little bit there? One of the key things about the FDM, as I said, with this import process, multidimensional mapping can greatly save us on time, reducing down our script. Some of the positiveness that I just mentioned, some of the other considerations with this new upgrade, VB scripting is no longer going to be supported. It will be reported by VBNet or JSON. Particularly around your import scripts, once again, they're going to be greatly reduced or eliminated with this multidimensional mapping, which will facilitate the need for having scripts. Going forward, the new import scripts will be supported on JSON only. We also have a great opportunity at this particular time, instead of having that black box of FDM to come into play and to do our particular mapping, can do a review of it. So at this particular upgrade, Oracle is kind of pushing for a review of the particular scripts, but going back and not just merely using the upgrade in place as we all have done in the past, but also just to look at the particular code and see if there are ways to make it more efficient to help solve that bottleneck of the import process. One of the last things to do in your particular code is in writing in it, so that others will understand, is certainly to go in there and comment your code and placing in comments on what does what for the few remaining code lines that are going to be left after the FDMEE upgrade. Kind of covering, Russ, from the upgrade, some of the positiveness with the multidimensionality, the shared attributes for I could take a particular mapping table. I wouldn't necessarily have to set up unique locations. I can use these shared artifacts. Also considering about my updates on my scripting that I'll need, in addition to having greatly reduced it, but also changing over to the JSON or the VBNet platform. With these particular items in mind, would like to go ahead and move us on to the next step, where we start talking about how FDMEE how FDMEE works.
Yeah, and Reed, one of the things that I always encourage people to do is when you look at all of the scripts that have been written over the years and understand that, you know, FDM was originally built as upstream and it was originally built for enterprise, and it's kind of been patched and upgraded and changed throughout the years, and a lot of people have relied on scripts to do a lot of things, from everything from automation to formatting, things like that. And it really is a great opportunity to kind of look at all of the supporting artifacts. And when I say artifact, it's everything from an import script or a formatting script, or maybe even using Task Manager to schedule things, is understanding what's the goal behind it, and is it easier to do it within the mapping and within, you know, FDMEE itself, because then it's visible and you don't have to kind of rely on a propeller head to write a script for you. So, and I'd echo that. It's really a good chance for you to go back and re-comment your code and make sure it's running the right way. So
I can take off my propeller hat?
and yeah, we kind of make fun of the developers, but we're all kind of techies in our own hearts. So as a group, we've been looking at all of the different JSON and VB taking that and coming up to speed on it. So we're the techies as well. So when we look at FDMEE, Financial Data Quality Management Enterprise Edition, it's really kind of understanding that from a process perspective, it has connectors in, direct connectors into Oracle suite of products, EBS, PeopleSoft are the ones that we work with directly. I've also done it with SAP. Anything where we can have access to the table structure and get the permissions that we need, we can connect to directly. There is the ability to connect directly to data warehouses and data marts through ODI connector. Other systems are going to follow in the future, and as they add systems, just make sure you understand there may be a licensing cost to directly connect, for example, to the SAP. But the other thing is they are still allowing if you are collecting Excel files, XML files, if you're collecting just pure raw data ASCII files, it does still allow you to do that. When we talk about drill through, make sure we'll kind of talk about the limitations of where we can drill through to, what that actually means. So that's the data piece of it, and what we do is we support all of these different platforms, strategic finance, planning and forecasting, profitability management, financial close, as well as HFM. And then, the flow is really intended to be backwards as well as you're drilling down through your hierarchies and your different platforms into your direct data sources. Now, FDMEE is also able to do metadata, and we're not talking about metadata today. We're basically focusing on data, but it also has the ability to do the same thing with metadata. FDMEE supports the following EPM target applications, okay, and it does support classic HFM applications as well as EPM architect applications for planning, the different planning modules, financial management, of course, S-base, ASO, and BSO cubes. Now, it's important to understand, and I'm not really an S-base person, but if S-base has been deployed in a standalone mode, it must be registered with shared services, and it doesn't really directly work with FDMEE, but we can put out the file format that we need. Planning applications that rely on that standalone S-base application cannot work directly with FDMEE. You have to go through the planning side. So FDMEE really focuses on workflow with artifacts used to support it, as the source system, the target application, and the source accounting entity. And it's really pretty simple. You define the source and create an import format, and it directly reads the source fields. So when I connect to EBS, it's actually going to ask me to sign on, have a sign-on, and be able to read those EBS tables. And it's actually going to read the table structure and say, here's all of the fields that are available to use. I can combine different fields. So, for example, if you're using entity and account to identify what the intercompany partner is, it's very simple for me to do that within the import format. And so that's one of the pieces that we talk about, is the visibility of that happening, and we'll actually go into the software here in a second. But what we try to do is make sure that we understand in the past that happened in the black box of your scripting, and now it can happen in the open air light of day, where people can understand where the data is coming from. When you define your target application, what it actually does is associates that import format that says within EBS I have something that's called account, and I'm going to map that to the account dimension within HFM. So what it's really doing is creating a direct link between the two different databases. There is no manual coding necessary. It's all point and click. It's very simple to use. When you connect directly to a supporting ledger, you're basically selecting a source accounting entity as a representative sample. And what that allows you to do is kind of real-time see the data that's coming across. And it allows you to group entities for processing as well. You can also ignore entities. I know that within a lot of ledgers, there's throwaway or test entities that you never want anybody to look at. You could ignore those entities if necessary, and it's really just a matter of picking them on and off. So details you should know. I tell you what, have a bunch of screenshots here, and what these screenshots are the different things that we're going to cover as we go through the live demo. But I've also got a live demo here, and a couple of things. If you're in a version prior to the 11.1.2, this probably looks really, really different for you. It's okay, but what you'll notice here is I have the ability when I go into Workspace's homepage to have HFM as well as data management open at the same time and click in and out of them. Now, you are subject to timeouts, and I've had this connected for about a half hour, so I think I'm okay, but if we have to sign in again, we'll do that. So, data management, now all you have to do, navigate, administer data management. You'll notice here, same place where your consolidation and planning administration is. All of the different pieces of EPM exist here as well. So administer data management, it brings you into this data management tab. And what you'll notice is that it kind of looks a little bit like FDM used to, right, the workspace. They tried to keep that as much as possible. Here in the setup piece is really where you're doing all of the different pieces of what it takes from a source and a destination to define what your data flow needs to be. So, for example, here in the source system, you'll notice I've got a couple of different ones. I've got an EBS, I've got a PeopleSoft. Open integration is where I connect the data warehouse table that has different fields. And then, of course, we always do a file. It's kind of the easiest way to begin an implementation is to start with a file, or at least it used to be. But EBS, here in the EBS, what I'm basically defining is what the source system type is, and you'll see all of the different source systems that we can go into, whether it's Fusion applications, PeopleSoft, EBS. Today we're going to be using EBS Release 12. I've done a lot of work with PeopleSoft, and then we also have a file one, as I was saying. And really what you're doing is setting it up to where, as I drill through the application, what is the query page that we have? And what I did was I set up a query page with our EBS team, and that query page really allows us to, within EBS, you can personalize your query pages, and what that allows you to do is kind of target the way people are running their systems. So here's the landing page that we actually do get. So when I set up that source system and I set up a target application, now you'll notice with this target application, we have an Emtec lab, and we do a lot of work with clients, a lot of development for clients when they have issues. So I just kind of picked a random couple of applications to tie this to. And this one happens to be called HSCon. And what you can see is when I connect to that target application, I'm basically telling it, here's all of the different pieces of that application and what data column they exist in. So I actually picked this application because it has an 8 dimensions application. It's a very large application. And what it allows us to do is do a little bit of performance testing as well. So notice here that if you're using detailed eliminations, you can enable the ICP transactions to flow through as well. And it really does depend on the complexity of your EBS or PeopleSoft system, how much you've turned on and how many dimensions you're using with each. But that's kind of the nice thing, is you're able to set that up just by pointing and clicking. When I look at this source accounting entity, what this allows you to do is, from a connection standpoint, now this happens to be a vision ledger that was set up for just demonstration purposes within our lab. So as you look at it, we've only clicked on a very few entities that we're actually going to be using. But very easily, if I wanted to add another entity to it, all I would need to do is click on and off. I can give it synonyms, and we'll talk about synonyms and how you actually set this up in a minute to look at the different ledgers. I'm going to cancel that change. And at any point, if you do something, you either save it or cancel it. And it's pretty well just click-driven. So after I set up those pieces, really what I'm doing is I'm setting up a import format. And Reed was talking about all of the different flexible fields that we have. And you'll notice here, what I've done is I've said, okay, account is equal to account. And then because within this EBS instance, we're doing different things, you can actually have two different structures. Here's an EBS system that only looks at account and entity, and this is an EBS instance that looks at entity, department, company, account, and you'll notice that I've mapped them to each of the fields. But if I wanted to say, for example, that for ICP, I not only wanted to do account, I wanted to do department, all I have to do is add that, and now when I import the data, it's going to combine those two fields automatically. And it actually just combines them with an underscore, right? And it used to be that if you wanted to do that, or if you had a change where you needed to activate something, you'd actually have to find somebody that understands FM scripting and get them to make the changes. Here, it's very transparent. Just like before, you have locations, and really what locations are, they're a little bit different than what I think applications used to be used for within FDM. Different locations are really different import formats that I want to use. Before, if I wanted to combine different things from a file, I'd have to actually have separate FDM applications to do that. And now, really all I have to do is have different locations. You see here that I've set up an EBS location, and what it's basically doing is giving me the ability to mix and match all of my different import formats, my different source systems, functional currencies, so that I can load into my application. Period mapping, just like you did within FDM, you create periods. One of the differences is in FDM, you could use shared period names. Here, the period names all have to be unique. So you'll notice here there's no space in between Feb and 2010. This application that we're going to be looking at actually has data in January in the year 2010. So that's what we're going to be using is 2010 today. Category mapping, you do have the ability to say that actual goes into actual. Any of the data that you're maintaining within your ledger or any of the files that you're receiving from planning, you can map what that global mapping is, or you can actually override it for the different applications. Here, we don't have any overrides, but we're just using the global mapping. But again, it's taking all of that stuff that you used to have to do within scripting and doing it directly within the tool itself. Very easy. You do have a script editor, and you can edit your scripts. We don't have any scripts in this, but the same kind of either Python or Visual Basic, as Reed was talking about. It is VB.net, so make sure you go out and get a new VB book as you're going into it. All of my team is transitioning to using Python. It's a pretty simple transition if you've ever seen Python, or this is just Java Python. So within the workflow, kind of just like you're used to, you have your data load workbench, maintaining metadata, doing any write-backs to your system. If your administrators do allow you to write data back to the general ledger for some reason, batch execution, reports. One of the differences, you used to have a catalog of reports that came with FDM, and you'd have to execute those reports. Now those reports execute automatically, so there's no waiting if you have reports. One of the things that we have done is write a script so that reports do come out automatically. It's kind of interesting. And then I can always execute scripts and batches just like I did within FDM. The data load workbench, yay, the fishes are still here. When this version came out, they actually changed the fishes to a check mark, and they got so many complaints that they changed it back. So the fishes still exist. But what you'll notice here is that I have a location, and I can have many different locations. They're all accessed from the same place. Now I don't have to log out, log in. I can select the period and the rule that I'm using to do this. And in my mind, it's the performance of this is pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, you'll notice that I can do a snapshot. I can do an incremental, and if I do an incremental, I do need to tell it the dates that are affected from a journal standpoint, or I can do a full refresh. In this case, snapshot and full refresh are going to act the same way. So I'm just going to execute that online. If I execute it offline, it does run in a batch, so I don't have to sit here and look at the processing. Reed, you've been working a lot with some clients that have been kind of transitioning folks and learning FDMEE. Anything on, as this is running, as anything that you've noticed as people learn this?
Yeah, initially there was people were concerned, as will happen with the upgrades. There is a little bit of a hesitation. However, once again, going back and talking to some of the clients, not only just the current implementation, but prior clients on the import scripts and how much things, and have a client go, well, darn, now my daughter can do it, as far as getting those imports done. And just that multidimensional is really, really key. It helped out not only from a maintenance standpoint, but also from, since FDM already knows at the get-go to pull in multiple fields. I did see some performance increases over what I had in the past of using the Visual Basic scripting.
Yeah, and I think the Python runs a lot faster, but you know, I'm not really a tech guy. That's when I become an accountant really quick, is when people start saying that. The export mode that we're going to use, again, just the same as you're used to. And when I talk about the FDM process wrapper, the nice thing is all of these things have remained the same, so there's not a lot of learning curve once you get used to where you click on doing stuff. I'm going to use replace. I'm going to do this online. And the total data set that I just imported is only about 5,000 rows. We have a pretty small Emtec lab. I didn't want to overdo the data set and tick off Lewis by filling up his server. But the nice thing, just like you're used to in the past, it is creating that archive file. If we were out here on this FDM data, it does create the same inbox, outbox, archive kind of thing for each of your locations. So the nice thing is none of that's really changed. And you'll notice I still get the fishes as I do my export. And this has changed a little bit. This screen has become quite a bit more functional. We'll notice it is showing me all of the source and then where it's mapping to. In this case, I've mapped to a couple of different, 4 or 5 different entities. So if I want to filter that, I can just filter it HSUSA, and I think one of the accounts that we have pointed to is AC 100-510, so just AC 100-510. Just make sure as you're typing these in, they do have to be case sensitive. If you're working in an Oracle database. And so what you'll notice is I just filtered for what's hitting that account, and it's showing me everything all the way across. Now, if I were to go over to HS Cons, which is my target application, and you'll notice here I can have different views open. If I look at my consolidation by period, you'll notice I haven't run a consolidation. So this is available just as a test data load. You can do drill, but when you're doing a drill, and we'll talk about some of these considerations as we talk about how drillback works, just make sure that you see this little red indentation here. Let me, you can see it a little bit clearly, and what that indicates at a base level is that you have the ability to drill through. Now, from a data management standpoint, we're going to talk about some of the considerations with drill through, and we'll go back to our presentation. But I just did want to show you from a live perspective. It does look a little bit different, but I think once people get comfortable with the different pieces of it, they pick it up pretty quickly. So you do have some screenshots in the webinar that I think we're going to make available. I think Elizabeth said is going to make it available, and you just make sure that if you're looking at those screenshots and kind of compare it to the different pieces within your current FDM implementation. So let's kind of talk about Drillback a little bit, because it is a little bit unique in the way they do it. The supported platforms that we have currently within this version of FDMEE, and I just got a text, it is .502 now, so there's been a couple of patches to .500. But FDMEE does allow drill-through sourcing from the following ledgers. The one we're using today is Oracle eBusiness Suite. Any of those PeopleSoft, SAP, JD Edwards, as well as human resource data from HCM 9.0 and 9.1. And a lot of times people create extracts from their human capital management system for headcount and things like that. We can now source those directly. This comes directly from Lewis, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but the basic technical sets for setting up FDMEE are pretty simple. Planning your upgrade is critical if you're going to this version. Making sure that you collaborate with your DBA and your source system administrator is critical. So what I did even within our lab is I made sure to contact our EBS guys, make sure I understand what the different layouts are, what tables they wanted me to go to. And then I got our internal DBA to set up the proper permissions to the tables. Now, all of this is listed in the doc that we're providing there, but once those table permissions have been set up, there are a few steps that the administrator needs to go through to make sure ODI is connecting correctly, and once that's done, I never have to touch it again. So it's a pretty easy setup, a pretty nice way of setting it up. One thing that I've noticed, and my comments are in bold here, one thing that I've noticed is that you're pretty much always going to need to set up synonyms on the database side. And I'm not a DBA, but basically what a synonym is it's telling it to look at one table versus another. And that may be because you have multiple table setups within your ERP, but again, working with our technical team, Luis Castillo, as well as your functional and DBA folks will be able to figure it out pretty quickly. And that's really kind of the crux of the setup. Once it's set up, though, it's when I set up the EBS pool, it took me a total of about an hour and a half to the point where I could import data. So it's a really cool way of doing it. Drill back and how it works. Drill back is allowed from a base level data point to a source load and then to the source system. And this is a really important point. I'm going to have Reed talk about it on the next slide. But, data is only loaded at the base level within most of our EPM systems. There are exceptions to that rule, of course, but you can only drill from the level in the actual intersection that you loaded. You must make sure that within FDM your drill region is enabled and that the drill back is allowed from any enabled hyperlink, whether it's reports, smart view, grids, forms, any of those things that we're loading data, as long as it's a base data intersection, then we allow it. The first drill back is always from the target application to the load point of view within FDM. And really what that load point of view just shows you is, here is the data that was physically loaded into that cell. And really what we're trying to do is make sure that you can answer questions as you're drilling down, right? And the nice thing about that is, hopefully, you won't have to get to the journal entry level before you get there, right? The second drill back launches a pre-populated query into your selected URL, and I'll show you that here in a second. But the PeopleSoft 9.2 launches the Oracle login and pre-populates the query screen. It allows access to the journal entry detail, and those table assignments can be changed using synonym. Your EBS can be personalized as well. So I started doing the demonstration rather than showing you a bunch of screenshots. But when we look here within the FDMEE screen, what you'll notice is this is an example of an enabled hyperlink. Over here on HSComms, you can see that hyperlink is denoted here. If you're here in Smart View, it can be denoted again. You can right-click Smart View and then drill through. If you're in HFM, you do have to click on the cell that you want to load, right-click, and then all the way back to drill. And then you can drill through to your source. And what it's going to do is eventually take you back here to your data management screen and show you all of the different things that were loaded, right? Now from here, if you want to kind of understand this, you can export this to Excel. But over here on this hyperlink, all you do is left click, and you'll notice I've got two things, drill through to source as well as view mappings. Now, if I view mappings, what you'll notice is I've chosen one that has an explicit mapping all the way through, and it's showing me within this rule name what my source and what my destination is. If there are any scripts that were being run to create this, it would show me a script icon here, and I could actually view the script. And then if I left click and drill through to source, you'll notice what it does, and I will warn you, and I was only granted a certain amount of access to our EBS instance. They're pretty smart guys. They don't want a consultant messing up their system. So I'm just going to log in. And you'll notice what it does is pre-populate the query. Now, within EBS, you can personalize what those queries are, and you can actually have many different landing pads. If you wanted to take this directly to a portal instead, you could do that. But in this case, all I do is hit go, or export, and it would execute the query. But you can see that it pre-populated it directly from what my different instance over here is. So it's a great way of connecting because I've created a hard link. We want to make sure that as we go through, we understand exactly what your source data looks like, and I think from a consulting standpoint, this makes it a lot easier to do so. Reed, any final comments before we talk about our call to action?
Well, it's just that drill through is just mind-blowing to clients, and being able to look at my total consolidated financial statement, looking at my income statement, taking that down to the capacities of HFM, drilling down through my entity structure, my chart of accounts, being able to find that line of detail, and then being able to further take it through, drill through out to my general ledger system. There have been so many questions over the past 20-plus years that I've been asked to do that exact same thing. That's it. Just working in the product, I get very excited about it. It's just amazing that to be able to carry to that particular level of detail. Second item is, once again, that multidimensional mapping. That could have made it so much simpler for me in my past experiences in Visual Basic on getting that mapping in and being able to combine those like fields and actually have FDMEE understand, hey, we are combining these fields. This isn't going to be a stop or a slowdown of your import process for performance improvements. Yeah, I'm FDMEE. FDM has always, from the very get-go, been a very impressive product, and they've continued that on.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I've never been an FDM person. I've always kind of stuck to the design of it a little bit, and this is the first version of FDM that I actually learned from the ground up, and it's really been a lot of fun learning it. So some of the next steps, you know, we always talk about what are our next steps coming out of a webinar, and there's a couple of different things that we at Emtec offer. One of them is a free offering, and that's really what we call a virtual assessment. And what that is about a 4-hour exercise that my team of senior architects, both Reed, myself, Gary Womack, Chris Young, hundreds of the implementations behind us. What we do is collect information beforehand, have a chance to kind of do a 30,000-foot view of what you're doing, ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and then have a 2-hour virtual collaboration via GoToMeeting and phone call to kind of understand how you use FDM. And I always make the joke, one of the great things about the Oracle EPM suite is you can basically make it do anything that you want it to do. One of the horrible things from a consulting standpoint is everybody has made it do whatever they wanted it to do. So it can be challenging sometimes understanding the reason that folks have implemented something in the past. And really what we try to do in this assessment is give you some deliverables that include what your upgrade considerations are going to be, the things that you're going to have to worry about, and that does include a pretty broad range of cost and effort estimates and timelines that you can use for your planning. The next step, and this is a paid offering that we have, basically the nice thing is you pay for 2 days and you get 4 days of effort. And if you do want it to be on site, we do ask you to pay travel. But it's a very detailed review of both your FDM and HFM applications, all of your processes, your artifacts. It's conducted by both myself as well as the senior architect team. And it's a 2-day on-site engagement. We try to spend as much time with you as possible to understand really how you're using things and what things go and what things go where. The deliverables are quite a bit more voluminous. Really coming out of it, you do have an actionable plan that you can take and go into your implementation of FDMEE, and it's really meant to reduce the kind of costs that you have getting started. So if you're interested in either of those, contact myself, Reed, Jennifer Sammons within our sales team can hook you up with one of your client service managers and make sure that you let us know that you're interested, and we'll get you hooked up. So I know, Elizabeth, you said that there's been some questions, so let's see if we can't answer some of those. So I appreciate your time today, and let's see if we can get that.
Okay. Thanks, guys. And judging from the handful of questions we have received so far, it appears that many of you are quite interested in this. So as a reminder, you are welcome to enter your question now in the right-hand navigation feature. And if we do run out of time and we are unable to get to your question, we'll be sure to have someone from our team follow up with you. So the first question, Russ and Reed, is, do you have to create a separate FDMEE application for each destination you are loading to, you know, HFM, 2 different applications, F-face cubes, etc.?
Yeah, good question. The answer is no. When I look at FDM, and I'll try not to hog all of the time, so I get kind of excited about this. The nice thing is, when I look at FDM, all I have to do is define the different, I already logged out. So all I have to do is define the different source systems that I'm pulling from and the different target applications. Now they do have to all be connected. If you've got one instance of FDMEE, they do all have to be connected within the same shared services instance.
Okay. Thank you very much, Russ. The next question is metadata shown coming through FDMEE managed differently than if you are currently using DRM?
It's a good question. I'll give you the consultant answer and say it depends. DRM has a lot more functionality and a lot different functionality, but what it does allow, it's the same kind of format. I had this conversation with Luis Castillo, who does a lot of our DRM work, and you know, his position is DRM has the ability to do a lot of heavy reformatting of metadata. This is really intended to do a little bit lighter reformatting, kind of similar to what EPMA does. So I'll give you the consultant answer and say it really depends on how you use DRM.
Okay. Can you use restricting logic on pull from the source system, you know, where clause in the SQL statement, or can you also use a union for these separate pulls?
You can, and within what it's doing is it's writing the pull directly from the table automatically using ODI. But if you do want to execute a separate script, you can, on import, execute different scripts. Yeah.
Okay. The next question that came in earlier was, so is there no HFM adapter needed to connect with HFM anymore?
There is no separate adapter. That's the really cool thing. When I look here at HFM, it used to be you had this adapter screen, and there was no way to understand what that adapter was actually doing once it was programmed. I defy anybody that says they could. You had to kind of lay them side by side and look at all the different options. Now, when you're doing a setup, all you're doing is saying, okay, what's your target application? You'll notice here, if I just go in to add a target application, all I really have to do is define the type of it, and it reaches directly into that application and understands what the table structure is. So it's a really cool feature that you don't have to have all those different adapters anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. Another question we have is there any change in the way from the client side, like Excel works in FDMEE when compared to, say, the classic FDM?
No, I think that question is really talking about when you're maintaining the different mapping. I didn't go into the mappings because they're really similar to what you did before. a couple of different things. You do have this multi-dimensional mapping now that Reed was talking about that allows you to say, okay, for account, instead of just looking at what I told you account was, look at however many different fields you wanted. But you can still, if you look at this, you can still export and import to Excel. I'll show you this export real quick. It doesn't take very long here. I'll just open this up. And you'll notice that it exports exactly like it did. The difference is that you can have multiple rules in effect. And so you'll notice I have likes and I have explicit. And you just have to call it out when you load it back in. So it does almost the same. Again, it depends on how you did FDM. Any other questions?
I believe we might be right at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we're right at 11 o'clock. Well, I tell you what, I know we got to a couple of different questions. Again, if you have anything that you'd like to ask, because I think we're kind of running out of time here, and geez, a consultant that doesn't know when to stop talking, huh? But just feel free to either give us a call or drop us a note, and we'll go from there.
Okay. We do have one other, well, actually, we have a few other ones that we can follow up, like Russ said, individually. But there is one that came in, if you can, from the drill back to the EPM app. Is there a way to automate the login process and not to have login when drilling back?
I apologize. I kind of discourage doing that because I do like the positive login feature, but I'm sure there's a way that we could hack it. We haven't done that before, but I could talk to the EBS guys and just make sure you send me an email and I'll get back to you directly. It's more a limit to if we'd have to store a password or not, I guess is the question. And Elizabeth, I'm cool with just continuing the questions if we have more.
Yes, if that's okay with everybody, that would be fantastic. Next question here. Let me pull that one up. Can the loading of the data from sources to target be automated without a manual intervention, a scheduled job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did it automatically. There are two ways to do it. One is by creating a batch. You still do have the ability to use the task manager. You'll notice here if I create a batch, all I have to do is execute it and it creates all of it, or I can schedule it as well. I think everybody's kind of used to having to put task manager out on a server somewhere and it goes out and pulls a directory every 30 seconds or whatever it is. We can have it do that, schedule and schedule it that way. At any time I can also check the status of it, which is something that you really couldn't do before. One of the things that I always tell folks is down here you can always see what your process details are, and your process details are going to tell you whether or not something's happened. So you'll see here, I did a lot of practicing. So you can see here at any point, you can see what the process step is. But yeah, you can still schedule, and but it's different than the bot that you use now.
Okay. And this person that's in a question and would like to know the ODI to do the FDMEE installation. Do they need to know that in order to do the FDMEE installation?
No, not directly. Hopefully you're using a consulting provider to do it. If you're doing trying to do the installation on your own, just make sure, and in the presentation there is a link directly to the documentation page that we use. Put it up here. Yeah. Here's the link to the document, and it's a pretty lengthy setup. Our guys are pretty good at it, but it's really about a day-long exercise to configure FDMEE.
Is it possible for you to show an example of an import script? That was another question that came in.
You know, I can send out an example to the folks that are on the webinar with the. I had one of my guys send it to me, but I didn't use it within the presentation. So I can send you an example of the difference between a VB script and a Jython script. In this instance, I'll be honest with you, we didn't use any import scripts. So that's kind of my goal, is to try to get away without doing any import scripts at all.
Okay. Does FDMEE work with EPMA for metadata management?
It does not. It does not create ADS files. So you just have to do that within EPMA itself.
Okay. And
but from a data migration, that's a metadata perspective. From a data perspective, it does link directly to EPMA applications. I haven't seen what's on the upgrade list for 2.4, but I know that's one of the ways that they're going.
Okay. I have a few more questions, if you guys are okay with time.
Sure.
Is Excel still required on the server while FDME is running?
No, it's not. You're not actually. Before, when you did certain things on the workbench, you had to actually log into the application server, and that really freaked a lot of security people out. The nice thing is you're doing everything through Workspace now, so it's your local instance of Excel that you'll be using.
Okay. The next question I have for you guys is, when loading SBase, this individual uses the load action script on the adapter to build a calculation script to clear the intersections that were being loaded. Where do you perform the clear in this particular version?
Clear the intersection. Okay, so I think what they're talking about is clearing the intersection within HFM. So I'll kind of speak to that, and send me a note if that wasn't where your question was going. Basically, we're using the replace mode, so I don't physically create a I don't physically do a clear, but in that data load rule, any scripts that I want to execute, hopefully I didn't log out here. Any scripts that I want to execute, I can do that. You'll notice here in this EBS script, I haven't executed any scripts, but I can actually embed that within the script itself. Generally, you don't have to do that clear intersection anymore. There's ways around it within both HFM as well as FDM, but within the data load rule where you do that.
All right, and looks like we have one more question. If you have licenses for the current version of FDM and then you move to FDMEE, do the license automatically transfer?
Great question, and the answer is I don't know. I would encourage you to, I think the answer is yes. I would hope that the answer is yes, because that means more people would get on FDMEE. But the real question is about the adapters and how those adapters work. So I'd contact your Oracle sales rep and make sure that they understand what your schema is. But generally, yes.
Okay. It looks like that's the questions we have. If you'd like, we can give it another minute or so.
Sure. While we're waiting, I really appreciate your guys' time today. I know we're just coming out of the holidays and you're going into close, so I really appreciate it. I saw that we had 84, 85 people and quite a few are still attending. So I appreciate all of the time today, and Reed, thanks for participating in the conversation.
Hey guys, it looks like this concludes for our webinar for today. Again, though, we will be making both the slides and the recording from today's webinar available for you to access off of our website. And as a reminder, if you have any questions about booking your free 4-hour virtual assessment, please reach out to Jennifer Sammons to get that scheduled at jennifer.sammons@emtecinc.com. So I appreciate everybody's time. I wish you guys all a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nelson.